This is a picture of the Statue of Liberty. This is a picture of the Statue of Liberty stamp issued by the post office with over 10.5 billion copies made. Do you see a difference? Well, the artist certainly did. And this is the story of how an artist won over $3 million from the USPS for a statue sitting in Las Vegas. So if you've been to Las Vegas, there's no doubt you've seen the iconic Statue of Liberty sitting in front of the New York. As a matter of fact, it made the news just a few years ago when it started wearing a Vegas Golden Knights sweater for the Stanley Cup playoffs. However, the United States Postal Service took some liberties, probably by accident, and this led to a giant lawsuit. We're going to cover the lawsuit today. Hang in there, it's definitely an interesting story. By the way, my name's Steven. This is my channel. I'm not leaving Las Vegas, a full-time Vegas blogger. By the way, if you guys are watching, I'm supposed to say this part. This is my cue. Click subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications, like, share, and comment. That way YouTube knows to suggest us to other people just like you. It helps the channel grow and it costs you $0. And if you want to support me, hit the links below, buy me a coffee. I thought I would bring you this interesting tale about how artist Robert Davidson managed to win over $3 million from the United States Postal Service because the Postal Service wasn't paying attention when they bought images in 2010. The stamp was issued in 2010. The United States Postal Service has a history of issuing specialty stamps. Some of the more notable specialty stamps were Elvis Presley, moon landing, different things like this. And they always commission artists to go ahead and put their work on the stamp. The Elvis stamp was notable because they wanted to have a poll. Was it young Elvis? Was it old Elvis? But there was no poll on this stamp. Stamps were issued in 2010. And the story goes that the United States Postal Service went to Getty Images, and they selected an image, paid $1,500 for that image, and then proceeded to throw it on over 10.5 billion stamps. The Forever Stamp of the United States of America is a unique concept. Stamp prices will go up, postal rates will go up. But if you were to buy 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 of these stamps at the time of issuance, you would have all of those on hand, and even if it took you 10 or 20 or 30 years to use all those stamps, you would get that locked-in postal rate without having to pay a surcharge. That's what a forever stamp is, and this was a forever stamp. Now, Robert Davidson was the sculptor of the Statue of Liberty here in Las Vegas. He created the statue for the New York. It's become iconic. If you go out there today, there's a memorial set up for all of the things that were sent to New York after 9/11. It's a pretty cool experience. I covered it during a live stream once. So, licensed by Getty Images for $1,500. The stamp ran from 2010 to 2014. After 2014, the USPS retired the stamp, meaning that any stamps that you had were still valid to use as postage, but you couldn't buy anymore. And what happened was a Texas-based image agency noticed that there was something a little bit different about this stamp. It didn't look quite right. So it turns out that somebody at the USPS, the United States Postal Service, picked an image of the Statue of Liberty in Las Vegas as opposed to the Statue of Liberty in New York City to use on their stamp. Now, Robert Davidson is not a silly fellow, so he sued for using his likeness on these stamps. He knew that there was money at play, and he wanted to make sure that he was getting rightfully compensated for the work that he produced. No one asked him if they could use his image of his sculpture. Getty licensed it, not knowing what the use was going to be, so he was completely in the clear. The USPS then argued that it was merely a copy of a famous building, a famous sculpture, an iconic landmark, and that they shouldn't have any issues using it. It should fall under copyright protection. It's permitted to use these kinds of images, and besides, this is a public building in Las Vegas. What's the big deal? Besides, also on top of that, the USPS claims they weren't getting any extra value off of this. This was a stamp. They lose money on everything that's mailed. So how could we possibly be deriving value from a copyrighted work? Well, Davidson argued. He said, actually, I feminized that statue. Because it was in Vegas and because I'm a sculptor and I'm an artist, I made that statue slightly different. Take a look at the facial features. It's got a smaller nose. It's less of a chiseled face. Besides, it's quite obvious that when you look at the crown, there's no observation in the crown. It's just a couple of black slats where the windows would be at the actual Statue of Liberty on the observation deck. The court actually agreed with Davidson and said that his work was different enough and feminized enough and individual enough that it did not fall under copyright protection like was argued by the USPS. Now, the USPS argued then back in court that they have artists that are clamoring to be able to have their work on stamps, and they never pay more than $5,000 to these artists. So the maximum they should ever give Davidson, the sculptor's artist, would be $10,000. That's fair, right? Davidson said no. He wanted a percentage of every single stamp sold, 10.5 billion. 3.2% to 4% of those stamps, however, were never circulated. This is something that would be more or less collectors, people buying them in mass, people saying, we know this is a limited run, people never using the stamps. That would amount to $70 million in pure profit for the United States Postal Service because the stamps would never be used. They were a single one-time purchase. They were never circulated back on the mail. So the United States Postal Service stood to make $70 million off of these 3.24% of stamps that were never actually used. And that would be a 5% royalty, I'm reading off my notes, awarded, plus $5,000 in damages awarded as well to Davidson, which amounted to $3.55 million. So the USPS argued unsuccessfully in a federal court that they were in the clear. We selected an image. That image is a public thing. It's a copy of a public thing, but we should be able to use this as much as we possibly want. They were resoundingly rejected, and again, Davidson was paid $3.55 million plus $5,000 in legal expenses for the problem that he had. Pretty interesting story, but it just goes to show you that what happens in Vegas sometimes goes all over the United States of America and even into Canada in the form of postal stamps. So my name is Steven. I hope you guys were entertained by this video. I sure was when I researched all of it with all of my different research notes right here. And I want you guys to know I'm here making videos all the time. So if you guys like the videos, make sure you click subscribe, hit the like button, hit all notifications, leave us a comment, do us a share, all that stuff. And if you want to, go ahead and buy me a coffee at the site below if you like the work that much. Thanks for watching, sharing, liking. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.